Hey, Sivan here. Welcome to this tutorial. It's going to be the first one in the playlist. What we're going to look at in this tutorial is interface elements and workspace settings. So let's begin. Start off, I've hidden all of my elements so we can kind of introduce them one by one and kind of talk about which settings and features are inside each one. So across the top we've got our main kind of options menus that hold all of our settings and buttons. So what we're looking for in display, we've got heads up display and UI elements. So because I'm going to put on a lot of these, this little dash bar across the top will allow me to pull off any windows I want. These, as soon as you close them, they'll just go back inside. So I'm going to pull this one off for now. You've got two areas to your display: heads up display, UI elements. UI elements is all of the stuff that I have currently turned off. So we're going to start there and start slowly bringing the elements back. So first one on the list, we have status line. So what status line holds is some of the kind of hotkeys for magnets. It also has our module set. So what this does is this kind of changes the top from window onwards. It basically kind of tries to simplify the options we've got. We also have render settings and we also have global settings. In one of the later videos I'll talk about the difference between global and local. So next thing we've got shelf. So this is your shelf. Shelf is basically similar to our menu sets, but it's the most common used tools for each. These two areas are slightly different depending on which version you're using. 16, they've kind of changed a lot of the elements around, and you're also able to build kind of custom bars where you can mix and match all the different elements, which same, I'll show you how to kind of set one of those up in a later video. So next thing, time slider. Right, these next ones I'm going to kind of bring on all in one go. So these two are purely for animation, physics, dynamics, batch rendering. These are all kind of done on the time sliders and the timelines. So this one here is kind of our frames, and then this one here is kind of seeing for sections. We then have command line and help line. Helpline is really useful. Any tool you scroll over, it will tell you what that tool is, and kind of once you start using the tool, it will tell you the next steps to get it to work. The command line is open to Mel or Python script, so if you're only good at programming, you can make your own codes, and you also, this other side of it will show errors or things that have been done. So when you open it up, there's a script editor in there that will tell you what has happened. Toolbox. So top half of this is your kind of used tools all the time. They're used for everything. You can't do anything in Maya without using at least half of these tools. The bottom half is kind of window setups. So these are default ones. You can change them and use them how you want. The default is what we currently have, which is a perspective view. We then have a foreview. By default, you switch between foreview and perspective view. The other way to do this is if you tap spacebar, and it's mouse sensitive or cursor sensitive. So any window you scroll over and hit spacebar, it will then focus on that window. So just tapping the spacebar, going into it, tapping on it again, will move between. Underneath that one, you've got perspective and outliner. This will list all of the objects. Same again, if you hit spacebar, close the outliner, spacebar will open it again. The ones below it start to get a little bit more complex. You've got graph editors, you've got hypershade, which kind of are sort of the later stages of your modeling. So next element we want to bring in is attribute editor and channel box. So these are found under here. but these icons up here, these four, will hold the options that kind of come up around this area. So first one is channel box. This will tell you basic sort of information about your objects, your dynamics, physics, whatever it is. It kind of tells you a simplified view. And so here you go, I just made a cube so you can see it. So it's just got the basic kind of settings in there, and that's sort of it. It's the quick basic view of your objects. The bottom half of this is your layer editor. Kind of works in a similar way to Photoshop. You can add, remove objects from different layers and then hide them. So I could hide this, or I could lock it, just to kind of speed up modeling or speed up your viewport. Sometimes if you've got millions of polys, depending on how powerful your machine is, it could start lagging out your viewport. You've got rendering, so you can put different render settings in there or set different objects to render in different ways. And you've also got an animations tab, so you can store different animations, different characters on different layers as well. Attribute editor, similar to channel box, but this time it has everything in it. It has all of the different elements for your object. It has every layer it's featured on. It has all of the textures that are applied to it. So it's kind of a big overview of everything, and it has all of the settings in here in lots of different kind of settings and whatever. So it all depends what kind of level you're working on your object. You may need to go in the attribute to kind of tidy it up. All of the texturing has to be kind of done through here. You can't do that from the channel box. What channel box also does is it holds history of your objects. Same with attribute editor, it holds a history and you can see everything that happened at that time. Channel box will just kind of list each action as it happens, and tell you what it did, and you can sometimes edit and jump back through the history. So other one, what have we got over here? So we've also got tool settings. So this will show up kind of settings for each tool. So at the moment I'm just in a selection, which is this one up here. So it's just kind of telling me basic things like I can marquee, and I can drag areas, and there are other options that we'll kind of go through as the videos progress. There are other ways to open settings. So if I click a tool up here, that empty square now holds my last tool used. And if I haven't got this open, I can just double click on this here and it will open settings, as well as inside each menu you'll see a little square. That means it has settings and options and whatever that relates to it. Some of them will open in here, some of them will open in a separate settings window, but you can kind of, so this one opens in a separate window. And the last one is something new to 15 and 16, kind of taken a little bit from Max. It's kind of a modeling toolkit, which has also your most used options in here, and each one, as you kind of use it, will open more settings and options. So it kind of depends on your workflow. If you prefer to work with a shelf or a toolkit, it has no bearing on your modeling. It's just kind of a workflow option for you. So that's all of the UI elements. You can hide, show whichever elements you want, just by kind of unchecking them. Some of them you can close. The other thing with these windows, if they have a little dashed dot on the side, you can tend to drag and drop and put them where you want. Some of them have slight restrictions on their placement. So this one, like, I can't put it at the side. It has to pretty much be on top or bottom. And same with this one over here. I can't put it on the top or bottom. It has to be on one of the sides. But it's very smooth now, the way the menu systems kind of quickly snap. It hasn't always been that way, but now it's very nice and smooth. And I recommend, depending on what kind of workflow you want to go for, that you kind of move until you're happy. Right, so that's it for UI elements. UI elements is basically everything around the screen. Yeah, so everything around the outside. They're your UI elements. Heads up display is basically everything now inside our workspace. So this area here is our workspace. Kind of starts with a grid at the bottom. You'll normally start with a it will say persp or something like that for perspective. So this is your camera you're currently looking through. So if I hit spacebar, so to get to 4 view like we did before, in each view we have a different camera name. So we have top, front, side. That's the kind of the default order to it. Same again, you can switch these around however you want. But what these are locked views. They are orthographic. So in our perspective, we've got 3 axes. We've got X, Y, and Z. In each of these, one axis has now been locked. So when we kind of look at navigation transformation in the next video, you'll see how this is more kind of apparent and what it restricts. So UI elements, heads up display. This is another preference thing. You may not need any of them. You may not have. You may need to use some of them for different things. Yeah. So one thing you will normally start up with is a view cube up in the top right. Personally, I've never really gotten on with it. So first thing I do when I open a new Maya or install a new version is I turn this off. Same again. It's completely down to you. Just the way it flips through cameras sometimes isn't always the best sort of way to go about it. Other sort of things that you may want to start using at the beginning when you first kind of start using Maya is something like polycount. What this will do is just tell you kind of the breakdown of the whole scene or a specific object. You can do object details. That will do distance from cameras as well as whether it's smoothed or backface culling and how many objects, things like that. Normally, I just kind of stick with camera name, poly count. That's pretty much the main things you need to get started. Right, so one last thing I want to look at in this video is adjusting your kind of basic preferences for the work area. It's not to the same level as CAD with units and measurements, but you do need to have a certain unit that you're working with. Otherwise it will change the way your lights work. It will change how strong your zoom in and zoom out is. So you need to kind of have a base unit to work with. So first kind of menu system, this is our first kind of look at a proper settings window, is we want to go to window, we want to go to settings, preferences, and preferences. Right, there's a lot of settings in here. We're not going to go through any of them. We're just going to jump to exactly what we need, and then in some of the later videos some of the other options may appear and we may need to adjust them. So the one we're looking for is under settings, and what we want to look for is the working units. So if you're working on, say, a very small sort of object, a person, something like that, maybe smaller, then you may want to stick with one of the smaller units. If you're working on maybe a small environment, a room, something like that, you may want to jump up to something a little bit bigger. So foot, meter, or yard. They're completely down to you, whatever you prefer to work in. The important thing is just that you remember what unit you're working in. But what it does is, if I say switch to foot, my grid in the background has now gotten huge, because originally I was working in centimeters, so this cube was 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter. When I switch, the cube is still 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter, but my grid is now 1 foot by 1 foot per square. So the square, the cube, is now tiny. So you probably want to change the settings when you first set up, or you'll need to scale up your objects after. But I'll show you how to kind of fix that in the next video. Other one, Angular, same, completely up to you. Default is degrees, and time is directly relating to the time slider down here. So it's 24 FPS by default. It's completely up to you what you want to do your animations in, but the physics and dynamics will use it as well. So this down here is done in frames, not seconds. So currently this is 1 second's worth of footage. Right, that's it for this video. In the next video we'll be looking at navigation, transformation and primitives. See you there.